Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Dr. Mandie Unedited. I'm Dr. Mandie, and I am a professional editor and researcher. And this podcast is going to be where we talk all about academic life, how much coffee you're drinking, how many citations you're using, and all the questionable coping mechanisms you may be using to get through this process. This podcast is going to be about all of the academic writing things. So we're going to go over all the parts of a dissertation, but we're also going to just talk about how to write a good paragraph, how to write an abstract, how to cite correctly. And we're not just going to talk about academics. Every once in a while, I am going to share a personal story with you. Okay, maybe it's going to be academic related, but I'd like to throw some fun stuff in there for all of my maybe non-academic listeners. Here's the thing, I was so overwhelmed by the love and support that I got from my friends and family who are not necessarily academics, and how much that they wanted to listen to this podcast, that I've actually re-recorded this first episode to kind of give you just maybe a little life update and let you know what's going on. Because look, y'all, I got the ADHD, so I am thinking about y'all all the time, but it never clicks in my head that I could just send you a text, slide into your DMs. But I really want you to know that I appreciate you, I see you, and thank you so much for all the support that all of my friends all over the world have given me over, the last several years. So for the fans, I just wanted to give you like a little update in my life. I don't know where I might have left off with some of y'all, but as you know, probably about 2 years ago, I moved to the UK. And I moved to the UK because I met a man. I met a man during COVID, like the most uncertain time in the world. I was like 29 years old. I was getting ready to like give up on dating altogether. And during COVID, where there's like not a lot of planes, there's not a lot of people moving around, I just so happened to meet the love of my life, who is from a different country, who flew in to do some work in the US. And I didn't think I was like one of them people that was gonna be falling in love, you know what I mean? Like at first sight. But that's what happened. So I moved from North Carolina, where I was a teacher, and I moved to Plymouth, which is actually where the Mayflower took off. So I think it's kind of ironic because I do have family members who, well, not family members, I guess you could say ancestors that were on the Mayflower. And so I think it's kind of ironic that I've made my way back here, and now in the urinal of one of my favorite pubs is where the steps of the Mayflower was. So isn't that funny how life comes around? But anyway, since I've moved to the UK, I was pretty much, I was like 70% done with my PhD at the time. So I spent a few months just working on that. And after that, I got to go to Fiji for the first time to visit my husband's family, and that was really exciting. And then I got my first job in the UK, which has been quite exciting because for the first time in my life, I have 25 days of paid leave as like a part-time worker. So, hey, get with it, America, you know what I mean? But no, also I got my first job in research. I did start my business in editing as well. And look, y'all, I know you guys have like been with me through a lot of different phases of my life. I've done a lot of different things. Again, I got the ADHD, okay? I'm just wandering and going with the flow. But now I have found myself in a place where I'm really happy. I have an amazing husband. I have an amazing life. I live in an amazing place. And now I feel like I'm on, the next level to really step it up and, sky's the limit, see where I go from here. So yeah, I hope that all of my friends and family that are listening, I hope you know how much I love you guys and I support you guys. And, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. And in the meantime, I really hope that if you're still listening, and you make it all the way through this podcast, I hope it's not too incredibly boring for you. But hopefully hopefully it will tickle your brain cells a little bit. I don't know, maybe you find my voice soothing or something. So let's go ahead and talk about all the parts of a dissertation, and this is called a quick guide to your dissertation. So yes, this is going to be a very quick overview. We're not going to get too in depth. That's what the next several episodes are going to be for. This is just going to be a splash into the shallow end, so we know just enough that we're aware of what to expect when we really get down dirty and serious. Let's just talk a little bit about what a dissertation is, and maybe again this might be helpful for my non-academic listeners out there. A dissertation is basically just a giant research paper that gives you trauma. I'm just kidding. So when you pursue a doctoral degree is considered to be like pretty much almost like the highest point of education that you can achieve in your field, in your agency. So towards the end of your doctoral program, you often have a project. Sometimes it's a dissertation, sometimes it's other projects, but basically the end all be all of it is that it's your chance to prove that you understand your field and that you can design and conduct research. Dissertations vary by discipline, but most of them follow a very familiar format. There are a few different types of different dissertations. So first you have quantitative dissertations, which if you think of the word quantity, that means like how much of something, right? So a quantitative dissertation is designed and conducted through numerical data. So that's when you see 50% of something, 1 out of 5 students, blah, blah, blah. Qualitative is another type of dissertation, which if you think of the word quality, if you ask somebody what the qualities of your shirt was, then, they would describe your shirt, right? The shirt is red and soft. And so qualitative dissertations tend to be more about the lived experience. And you're kind of creating this rich story of the phenomenon that you're studying through the eyes of the participant. And then, of course, you have mixed methods, which I think is becoming, especially like where I am, is becoming increasingly popular in research, where you basically take a little bit of both quantitative and qualitative methods and throw them in together. Okay, so we're going to talk about all the accoutrements of of a dissertation in a little bit, but let's just start with the introduction. This is just the hi, here's what I'm doing, a why should you care chapter. This is where you're going to set the stage, state the problem, state the purpose, and let us know what your research questions are. You're going to give us a little bit of background, what the historical context, social context, theoretical contexts are, and you're also going to need to prove why your study is significant. You're going to have to prove why it's significant to the enhancement of the theory that you're choosing. For you guys that are not academics, dissertations are written upon a theory. And this is like literally things that you may have heard of before, like the Pavlov's dog or the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so the theory becomes the foundation of a dissertation. And when you're explaining the significance of your dissertation, it's essential that you talk about the theory and how your dissertation is going to contribute to that. You might need to also discuss how your dissertation is going to be significant empirically. So how is it going to add to the library of information that's already out there on your topic? And you might even have to prove its practical significance, which is basically just how is your study going to make the world a better place? And then we'll round off our introduction with some good old definitions, define all the key terms that are going to be in your study. And one last thing, chapter 1 is not the first chapter that you're going to write. The first chapter that you're probably going to write is your literature review, which is typically your chapter 2. And here's when you're going to start to have to read all of the things and probably start questioning your life choices. You're going to have to put the romantasy books on the shelf for a few months, and you're going to probably have to read some of the most dense, intense reading of your life. So what happens after you read all of that stuff is that you actually have to then prove that you know it's already out there through research, what gaps are presenting in research, and then how your topic is going to fit in. So a literature review is basically that you've heard all the sides of the story, and it's up to you to tell it and present it in a critically thought out way. So your literature review will include sections like a theoretical framework where you'll explain, kind of the origins of your theory and how it works into your study. And then you have the review of literature or the synthesis of literature, whereas it's basically you're telling us all of the important information ever written on your topic that already exists. And if you haven't questioned yourself at some point along the doctoral process, once you get to a literature review, that's when you're really probably going to start rethinking everything about your life. But then you get to chapter 3, the methodology section. And this section is basically like, here's how I'm going to do the thing. You're going to talk about your research design, data collection, participants, and why you chose them all. So this section is kind of just like a how-to manual to how you're going to do your research. So this chapter is going to include a research design, which is the overall strategy that you use to plan and carry out your study. And it's used to ensure that you're going to address your research questions in the most effective way possible. You're also going to state your research questions in this section, as well as any sub-questions you might have. You're going to talk about your settings and participants. So a setting is basically where you held this research, and your participants are who you researched. You'll have a researcher positionality, which I think is a nice section that you get to talk about on a more personal level, why this research is important to you, what your role is in this research, how you're going to interpret it, and any philosophical assumptions. You'll have procedures, which basically is all the technical stuff. When you do research, you have to have permission from, the sites, from the school that you're researching through. And there is a process as you're carrying out research that you have to go through to make sure that your research is going to be ethical. And then you get to talk about all your data collection plans. So here's where you're going to lay out your data collection methods, which is stuff like interviews, questionnaires, surveys, and you're also going to talk about how trustworthy you are. So you got to prove that you're being credible, that you're being transparent, and that you're a dependable person to carry out this research in the truest way possible. And then we'll make our way to chapter 4, which is kind of like our results or our findings section. A lot of times people get chapter 4, the results and findings, and chapter 5, the discussion mixed up. So chapter 4 is exclusively only what you found. You're not making any interpretations yet. But this is fun because this is the chapter where you actually carried out the research. You did all your interviews or focus groups or whatever you're doing. You talked to all the people, you gathered all the data. And before you wrote this chapter, you've probably done some sort of analysis to figure out what the major themes of your research are. Before you started this chapter, you've collected all your data, you've done all the interviews, the focus groups, the surveys, the questionnaires, you've talked to all the people, and now you're just telling us what they said. So again, no interpretations, no personal feelings, it's just cold hard facts. And if you're doing a quantitative study, then you'll probably have a lot of tables and statistics here. And if you're doing a qualitative study, this is where you're going to be writing a lot of direct quotes and themes. So in this section, you're going to talk about each individual participant, give us like a paragraph about who that person is, what they do, and how they relate to your study. You're going to give us the results and maybe even answer your research questions. And then chapter 5. This is the discussion section. This is the analysis. So here is where you can explain what your findings mean and how they connect to existing research and whether or not your original question got answered. So in this chapter, you get to have a big old discussion about all the good stuff that you found. You get to summarize your key thematic findings, talk about what this could mean for policy and practice in whatever field that you're studying, what this could mean for whatever theory you chose, and how this can add to empirical literature. You also might discuss in this section what we call limitations and delimitations, so things that you specifically chose to limit in the study, such as you might have only searched women, you might have only searched a certain age group, whereas delimitations is kind of things that were out of your control. So for example, in my research, one of the things is that all of my participants ended up being female. So I'm missing that element of other voices. And that could affect how, the outcomes or how my research was interpreted. However, that's why I'm letting you know. It's kind of like a little disclaimer. And then you've made it to the end. You get to make recommendations, like you're such a professional researcher now, for future research. But no, seriously, like now you're a full-fledged researcher at this point when you make it to the end of your dissertation. And so some other tidbits that you're going to see in a dissertation is, of course, an abstract at the beginning. You'll have a table of contents, lists of figures, lists of tables that you've used throughout your manuscript. And then at the end, you're going to have references, every single solitary reference that you've used in your entire manuscript, and your appendices, which will include proof of your ethical approval. It will also include like your how you collected data and give examples of the data that you collected. Look, there you have it. A dissertation. It's huge. It's intimidating. I can't believe I've written an entire book. I can't believe it's published somewhere. And now it's kind of funny that, I actually research professionally because I feel like that was so much effort and it's not that serious in the real research world. It's so much better when you get into a actual research project that you only have to write maybe, okay, look, it still might be like 20 pages, but 20 pages versus like 150, 200 pages is absolutely a breeze. But if you're getting ready to start a dissertation, look, you're not going to write it all at once. It's a process, and there will be steps along the way. And sometimes you're going to have to write sections where you might not have any idea what they are. I mean, like, talk about the word, like, whatever it's called, axological. I cannot tell you for my life what that word means, but guess what? I wrote a section about it. So it's okay if you're not sure what's going on. Sometimes you just need to start and you just need to keep showing up. It will be messy, it will be a bloodbath, it will be confusing, but it's okay. And hey, that's what I'm here for. So that's it for today's quick guide. And I put that in quotation marks because I think we've all figured out I'm a little bit of a chatter. But I hope that this episode helped you untangle some of the chaos and understanding what's going on with dissertations. So let me know where you're at in the dissertation process. Have you started? Are you thinking about starting? Are you, up to your eyeballs in literature? Leave me a comment below. Let me know. And if you need some help, please reach out to me. You can get a hold of me through my website, which is www.drmandieedits.com, or you can email me at mandiekf@gmail.com. That's MANDIEKF at gmail.com. And if you'd like to figure out what else I'm doing in my life, I do post tips and weird things in other places. You can check out my social media. It's in the description on my Linktree link. Next week, we're going to talk about how I got into research, and then the week after that, we're just going to start with the dirty. We're going to start with the literature review. So we're going to discuss all the parts of the literature review because we all know that's the band-aid we just got to rip off. We all know that we just got to get over that. That's the worst part, and then everything else will be a dream. But anyway, until next time, keep writing. Stay weird, I guess, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye!